Sarah is an online fitness coach from Ireland with 6 years of experience in the fitness industry, helping hundreds of women to achieve life-changing results. From losing body fat and building strength, to running their first race and overcoming limited beliefs. With a background in competitive sport and a passion for travel, she inspires women to take control of their fitness and unlock their potential. Can you break down the seasons of the cycle and their impact on energy and performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So one myth that I hear a lot is that women should be increasing the weights every week in the gym. And that's just a myth. That's not true. Like, we kind of assume, because males can generally go to the gym every week and up the weight slightly every week, and it's more achievable for men. But for women, we have to work with our menstrual cycle, especially when it comes to training. So knowing where you are in your cycle is so important when it comes to your training and tracking it. And I like to use the analogy of the 4 seasons to help understand the 4 stages of our cycle. So starting off in your winter or your bleed phase, this is usually 1 to 2 days before your period until the first couple of days into your period. During this phase, you'll likely experience like cramping, bloating, PMS. You'll have a low pain tolerance. You'll have like a low people tolerance as well. Usually we kind of have a low people tolerance around that time of the month. And your strength is going to be lowered in that phase as well. So ideally, what you want to do in that phase is pull back on the weights and focus on refining your technique, because then you will just be able to still tip away and do a little bit of exercise and lift a little bit of strength training without stressing your body out too much. So after that phase, then you're into what's called the spring or the follicular phase. And this is usually from day 5 to day 11. And during this time of the month, you'll likely experience like an increase in energy. You'll be feeling refreshed. Your strength's going to be up. Your hormones are going to be nice and relaxed, and you're going to be feeling a lot more social. And the best way to train in this phase is to push yourself to lift heavier with the weights, because during this phase, you're going to be in what's called an anabolic state, or a state of muscle building or maintaining muscle. And also your insulin sensitivity is going to be high in this phase, meaning your body responds really well to carbs in that phase as well. So making sure you have a carb source before the gym is going to work really well. And then after that follicular or spring phase, you're into what's called your summer or your ovulation phase. And this is generally the best phase for us as women. This is the best phase for you to go to the gym, try push yourself the weights, hit a couple of PBs. It runs from roughly day 11 to day 19. And you're going to be feeling a lot more social. You're going to be feeling strong, full of energy. Libido is going to be high. You're going to be feeling creative, productive, efficient, and it's just the best time to hit PBs in the gym and push yourself that little bit more of the weights. So for any like female entrepreneurs out there, or anyone who has like full control of their schedule, this is the best time to put in like your social events. So if you know you're going to be around more people or you have to attend things, this is the best time to do that, because you're going to be feeling a lot more outgoing and social and full of energy, full of ideas, and you're going to be feeling your best self. Then we're into the final phase, which is your autumn or your luteal phase. And this runs from roughly day 20 to day 28. So this is where we become a lot less outgoing, social. Just like in the autumn months, you kind of want to retreat, come into yourself, almost hibernate in yourself. Like, our hormones are really craving that sense of hibernation during these kind of couple of days of your menstrual cycle. So we're going to be feeling like extra hungry, because we're going to have an increase in our body temperature, which means we're burning more calories at rest. So we're feeling extra hungry in this phase. Your mood, your sleep, and your appetite, they're all going to be impacted. And there's also a decrease in serotonin and dopamine in this phase, making us feel a little bit more moody than usual. And that's why we tend to go for things like crisps and chocolate, because we have that increase in body temperature, which means we're burning more calories at rest, which means we're more hungry. And then we also have the decrease in serotonin and dopamine, which makes us want to go for foods that give us that kind of quick release. So that's generally why we have those cravings during that time of the month. So in terms of training for your luteal phase, it's best to pull back on the weights and do more kind of sets and reps instead for like endurance, or go for walks instead of doing any high intensity stuff.
Okay, like so much amazing information. I love the analogy with the four seasons as well, by the way. And I was trying to kind of map out in terms of like the workouts that would be done during those phases. So it sounds like when you're kind of in your winter phase at the very beginning, it's about like lower weights, almost like an easier. You can come in and correct me if I'm misinterpreting this as well, but kind of like not easier workouts, but definitely not a time to like push to your best performance in terms of like strength training. Next phase then in terms of the spring is that you're full of energy, like is kicking up, you're feeling good, and now it's a time to capitalize on that. And now you can start to load a small bit. Then you get into your summer phase. It's about, like you said, maintaining. And then when it comes into the winter phase, it's almost like tapering back down again in terms of the strength training that you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. Your follicular and your ovulation phases, those are the best times to do high intensity stuff, to push yourself in with the weights. That's roughly from day 5 to day 14 of your cycle. And then going into your autumn and your winter, which is your luteal and your bleed phase, that is definitely the best time to pull back on the weights. Do a small bit of walking instead of high intensity work, and practice your technique and just work on moving really well in that phase.
I'm curious what advice you would give to women who perhaps feel like they're fighting against their bodies, like during certain times of the month. Like we've discussed it earlier around the instant gratification piece, and people are wanting results and wanting them now. I just think even from an emotional standpoint, or like trying to build sustained habits, like that can be really tough if you're trying to like fight against like human nature in some aspects.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to harness your menstrual cycle with your training, you're going to unlock so much more strength and energy because you're working with your cycle. So most people go to the gym and they try beat their scores week to week, but instead if you look at it month to month and beat your previous score at the same time of the months each month, then you're going to see improvements. And that's the best way to look at it, is actually comparing your progress month to month instead of week to week, because harnessing your menstrual cycle to work with you is almost like a superpower. It's just incredible. You feel amazing. Each phase has its own set of like unique benefits, or unique, we call them superpowers in the program. Like even in those months where your strength is lower and you're feeling a lot more reserved, or you want to kind of retreat back into yourself, that's a really great time to do things like meditation, because you're going to be feeling a lot more intuitive. You're going to be feeling a lot more like clued into energies and things like that. So yeah, those are, even though those are not months to push or weeks to push yourself, they're still really good weeks to focus on other areas of fitness, not just strength training.
The pieces are starting to come together slowly for me, Sarah. You spoke earlier around a fixed versus a growth mindset. So what you're doing there is, instead of, like looking at things week to week, you really want to step back. Like, let's see the bigger picture here in terms of your fitness goals. And then, like you said, even when there's downtime in terms of like the intensity of your exercise, that is a time to like tune into other areas of your health as well. And you're just kind of harvesting that growth mindset as you're going throughout the whole program.
Yes, absolutely. And learning about your body as well. Learning, kind of being more in tune with how you're feeling and what your body needs, instead of pushing your body to do things that it's not going to do, like it's not going to optimally do best. Instead of doing that, it's just kind of tuning into your body to see what it needs in that moment or that week. It's not always about pushing yourself with the weights. And there's a lot more benefit to kind of taking it handy as well some of the weeks.
Yeah, so, and it kind of sounds like even though you are looking out in terms of bigger picture monthly progress as well, there is that individualized approach too, that you can be flexible within the program, right? If something's not working for you in the moment, they can either connect with you, or they have the resources and tools that they can use to lean on.
Yes, absolutely. Like we're lucky enough to have people come in, guest speakers to come in and do seminars and workshops with us on the menstrual cycle, provide us with loads of information on how to harness your hormones during your menstrual cycle, and when the best times to push yourself are, and when the times you need to pull back and give yourself a little bit of rest. So it's a huge part of health. It's sometimes overlooked as well, and we sometimes kind of forget that we need to align ourselves with the menstrual cycle if you want to get the most out of ourselves. So it's a great thing. I would definitely recommend anyone who's not tracking their cycle to definitely start tracking and to log their symptoms and see how they're feeling, because a lot of the time we might feel like we're up and down, but the truth is like it might just be a part of our cycle. It might just be a time of the month where we generally don't have that much energy. And if you're not tracking or if you're not logging your symptoms month to month, it can be hard to spot that. So tracking your cycle is definitely something I recommend everyone should start doing.
What tools would you recommend to do that?
I use my Garmin watch to help me track my cycle. I know Fitbit has it as well. Apple Watch would have it too. There are a good few apps out there. Flow is the name of another app that you can log. I think Flow is really good for women who are trying to conceive, trying to have children. Tells you the best time when your fertile window is open, and it gives you a lot of data when it comes to your fertility. But there's plenty of apps out on the market at the minute if you don't have a watch that can help.
When people came in to give those talks and presentations with you as well, did they make reference to how being on the pill might change kind of the plans that you're trying to work towards?
Yes.
If it does at all.
Yeah, it does. That is a different story when it comes to your cycle. So what the pill does, it actually switches off your hormones. So instead of having these like peaks and troughs in your cycle, you're generally flatlined. So when it comes to training, you can just train away. You don't need to worry about the kind of peaks and troughs too much. But yeah, it generally flatlines your hormones. It's quite difficult to kind of know where you are in your cycle when you're on the pill. Although tracking your symptoms is definitely helpful to help you kind of understand roughly where you might be. That is a whole different story when it comes to your hormones, being on birth control.
What challenges does that present to you then, as if you are working with someone on the pill? How do you adjust their programs?
Generally, they don't have any major symptoms. They don't have lower strength or anything like that. They can generally just keep going. Like they're fairly consistent when it comes to that because they're pretty much flatlined and they're at base level all the time usually. So we don't make any changes. Like whenever the women on the program are menstruating, when it's that first season of their cycle, I usually tell them there's no need to upload your progress photos or your weight measurements because you're naturally going to be up in weight. There's going to be a small bit of water retention, and that's no reflection on the work that you've done so far this week. So I generally tell them not to do that on that week. But when it comes to birth control, they can just plow on and they can just like upload every week.
Okay, so yeah, like you said, it's just more like a flat line versus really adjusting to, we'll say, the seasons throughout the month.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you look at any of the science or the data that comes out of like your hormones every month on someone who has a regular cycle, it's usually small at the beginning and then it kind of peaks and then it comes back down and then it's back down at baseline. But for someone who's on a contraceptive pill, it's usually just a straight line. There is no ups or downs. It's just flatlined.
Okay. So it's really interesting too with your sporting background. I was kind of thinking of scenarios like that. Let's just say like if you are just going through your normal cycle and you might have, say, a game or a final that happens to coincide with the winter period of the cycle as well. Is there a way like to ensure optimal performance even during that time, or is it
the data on it is inconclusive. There is quite a lot of studies being done, especially the relationship between the menstrual cycle and ACL tears. That's a huge one. The data on it is inconclusive and there's no definite data to say that you're more at risk of an injury at a certain time of the month. But as a female who obviously competes in sport, I have definitely found like the winter phase of my cycle, I definitely experience a bit more pain, a bit more discomfort during that time of the month. But the data is just not there to support it right now. What they were looking at is the ACL tears. There is a correlation between ACL tears and being in your spring months. So it's that follicular phase just after your period is the time when a lot of athletes tear their ACLs. So there is a relationship between those two. But again, the data is inconclusive on it. But hopefully there's going to be more studies done, more information and research done on that because it is a huge part of women's sport and it definitely deserves to be studied more.
Yeah, it is incredibly granular, right? Given that it's hormone balances, like everyone is unique and different. It's probably hard to like really isolate to certain stages, just given the variance. So I don't know, maybe with increased technology, they can like dive a little bit deeper and be able to determine when hormone levels are at a certain distribution. I don't know. It's pretty complex.
Yeah, it is. Again, I think it comes down to just the research, not enough research being done. So hopefully that'll start to change. Like, female sport is growing at a rapid pace. So hopefully there's a bit more investment being put behind these studies, and we'll be able to get more data over the next couple of months and years. But for now, the data is just inconclusive.